Fossil hunters, hope you're finding some good stuff out there. We've got some real interesting things going on these next 2 episodes. We're gonna be leaving our Pleistocene fossils behind here in Florida, and we're going to be traveling way back to the Cretaceous, 68 million years ago in South Dakota. We're gonna visit Frank Garcia, who we've interviewed in the past. Now, Frank is a world-famous fossil finder. As a matter of fact, he opened a brand new museum called the World Fossil Finder Museum around his newest discovery, a tylosaur, a giant swimming reptile. We'll also get to hunt with Frank and his crew as we search for more Cretaceous sea creatures. So what do you say we get started?
Well, this is an exciting day for fossil hunters. We're here in South Dakota visiting the world-famous fossil finder, Frank Garcia, and his world-famous World Fossil Finder Museum. We're super excited to be here, and he's here with his wife, Debbie Sue, who is also the namesake for the tylosaur that we will see, and we're very excited to be here. Let's everyone give a good fossil on. Fossil on!
Hello, I'm Frank Garcia, and this is the World Fossil Finder Museum here in Hot Springs, South Dakota. And we're real proud of the museum that we put together here. And I wanted to do something special because I know there's a lot of museums in the area, but I wanted to put a museum together that has a large variety of mammals from all over the world. And we've got some fossils that no one else has, the Smithsonian doesn't have, including, of course, the tylosaur, which is the largest carnivorous swimming reptile anywhere. Larger than a T-Rex, yes. It's almost 50 feet long. So, welcome to the museum. And I'm gonna give you a little virtual tour here. I discovered in 1983, on June 27th, the world's richest, earliest Ice Age fossil site. And we found over 214 different kinds of different mammals and a few reptiles, many birds. Several of them are new to science. The Smithsonian Institution said that this discovery was like finding a new chapter in the history of life. So this is my legacy. That's the iconic photograph up there, me looking at the wall. And the wall is real, the shells are real, the fossils are real. It's just been transplanted. And the shells came from that particular spot. So did most of the fossils. And of course, here we have the last great American horse, which I found at the Lacey Shell Pit, and that was the name of this pit. Mr. Lacey gave us permission to hunt on the site, and I was working with the Smithsonian at the time I got permission. And this is the last great American horse, not related to any of the horses you see around here, or the United States, because they were brought in by the Spanish, because at the end of the Ice Age, the horses died out. Yes, here we have this mural that was done by a good friend of mine in Minnesota named Mike Manasco. He's a nationally acclaimed artist. And he put this thing together for me. We had over 214 animals, but you can only cram like 175, I think, in this thing. But if you look at it carefully, all of these animals that you see here, we found all of their bones. So, I mean, it's an amazing mural. It really is.
Frank, I gotta ask you a question. How in the world did you stumble upon this incredible tylosaur?
Moved up here 8 or 9 years ago from Florida. I always wanted to find a mosasaur, but I'm retired. I've already found everything there is to be found. 30 new animals to science. I've had several named for me. And while I was in town at Edgemont, my wife and I moved there, and we heard about a guy in town named Gary Brown, and he was a fossil collector. So I friended Gary, and I asked him this. I said, I always wanted to find a mosasaur vertebrae. Can't find them in Florida because that's Cretaceous, and that was underwater during the dinosaur period. But they're up here. And Gary says, yes, there's a spot about 4 miles from town here, and it's a private ranch, and we have access to it, and I'll take you there.
All right. You want to see something? Watch this. Look at those vertebrae. This is the rest of the tail, this monster here. Look at that. Check that out. Look at these vertebrae. Look, look. Check, are you watching? Look at that. Look, 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 look. Look, look, more vertebrae. Look, check it out. Check it out. Check it out.
So Gary and I started digging, and sure enough, we exposed like 60 or 70 vertebrae. The next day, I bring my wife over, and my wife and I are digging, and so is Gary. Gary's around where the tail is. My wife and I are right over there where the rib cage is. And right here where the skull is, of course, it's not exposed, not shown. My wife says, I think I know where that skull is. I said, really? She says, look at that aloe plant up there about 6-7 feet. And I said, well, all right. She said, dig underneath it. So I went and dug underneath the aloe plant, and I looked at her and I said, you were right, there's the skull. And she came over and dug with me, and it was just a thrill of our life to dig the biggest, best tylosaur skull. This thing is 5 feet long. It's unnamed tylosaur. So so I call it Debbie Sue after my wife. I figure, she deserves to have this thing named after her.
Yeah, this place is amazing. This is a Pierre Shale right here. That's what this formation is, and this is where you find mosasaurs. Wow, what a beast. Well, here we are out here. We're finally getting it ready to boot bar, and check it out. I mean, that's a monster. This is a big frickin' mosasaur. Skull's 4 feet long. The teeth are white, but it's crusted white with calcite crystal, and underneath it is blue enamel. So it's got most of the teeth. There's one tooth there, it's bent down. There's another tooth bent down, another one bent down, another one bent down, another one bent down. And then here's the lower jaw. The right side is here, and the left side is here. Isn't that amazing? A big mosasaur. Good grief almighty. And there's the back of the head right in here. And that's the vertebral column going all the way that way. And there's the big ribs. What a big rascal. I dreamed about this all my life. I couldn't believe I found one. Not like this, a monster. Pretty cool. Big mosasaur. There's the ribs. Come here. Please send you all a great and fun Halloween.
Unusual. This is the real skull on the skeleton. That's usually not that common to find the real skull. Tell me a little bit about that.
About 97, 98% real, yes. And the skull was put together for me by Peter Larson. And we all know who Peter Larson is the man that dug up Sioux, the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
The skull is where the majority of the weight of the skeleton is, and this skull is mounted to the floor. So none of the weight of the skull is actually in any of these beams on the ceiling. No. So the rest of the body is the weight on the ceiling, not the skull.
Do you have plans to make copies of the skull since it's so rare?
Sure, I'd like to. And we will. Once we get a nice 3D printer, we can do that.
While we're at it, I noticed that there is like a perfect circular hole over there. Is that like a bone core, or what is that? Do you know?
Well, that's actually, that's kind of funny. So that is the brain case, so it would have had holes through it. But the guys up at Black Hills Institute who prepared the skull, they put that piece of metal in there so that you can attach a custom handle to it when you're actually moving the specimen itself.
They did. You guys never put spacers between the vertebrae, right?
No, we didn't.
Now, why? How?
We didn't want to do that.
Would it be too long if that happened?
If it was spacers, it would be over 50 feet long. So technically, we have the world's biggest tylosaur of this new unnamed species.
So Frank, I see that you guys found a vertebrae and the ear bone inside of her rib cage. What would that mean? Would it mean like a baby she could have been carrying, or would it have been dinner? What could that mean?
Well, looking at the vertebrae, it looks like it wasn't a baby. So it was maybe a 20-foot Mosasaur that Debbie Sue wanted to eat one day.
So we're here in front of the Titanothere, and I have a special fondness because it has Titan in the name of it, and Titan's my dog, or our dog. Now,
Does he have horns like that?
He does not.
Okay.
I do know it's a type of rhino, correct?
An ancient rhino.
Okay.
Not a true rhino.
Okay, that's what I wanted
Primitive.
to ask, what the difference between the
Even though they're-
primitive and the present.
Their skeletal remains compare with today's rhino and the prehistoric rhinos of the Oligocene White River, very much the same, but it was a very primitive ancient rhino-like animal. And the reason this animal died out, didn't go further into the evolutionary of time, is because of the teeth. The teeth were real short crowned. So in other words, eating grasses, they wore their teeth out real quick.
Oh.
And so evolution said, that's the end. This is really my favorite of all animals. So I love the Titanotheres, maybe because of the teeth. There's so much artwork going on. That's what I love about, because usually when you go to a museum, you don't see a museum showing Titanothere skulls like this. They're always down with the lower jaws, and you don't get to see what the teeth look like. So I think it's important to show what the teeth look like. The beautiful configurations.
Traditionally, you see their skulls mounted like this, with the cranium and the mandible together, but we also like to have the teeth showing off with the craniums that Frank showed.
And you don't always find them with their jaw either. It's pretty rare to find them with the jaw attached. And most of the ones you see, it's either a cast jaw or it's a jaw from another one. There's not very many that found with their actual jaw, which is why kind of we've got that one like that, because that jaw was found with the skull.
So
just
that's 100%.
6 inches back. Yeah, this is 100% real associated jaw with the skull.
As we talked about Mike Manasco's incredible mural, I commissioned Mike to make a colored pencil drawing of why these animals were called thunderbeast. And they were named thunderbeast by the Sioux Indian. The Sioux Indian would be riding along in the Badlands after a big thunderstorm, and some of these skulls would be barely washed out. You can see the horns and the teeth and the face. So therefore, the Sioux Indian gave the name thunderbeast.
Frank, here at the museum, we're in a different room. Where are we? What is this place?
Well, this is the prep lab here. And here's where we bring our fossils that are busted up, and we have them covered with plaster, and basically here's where they come to life.
What tools would you take out into the field to find some of the fossils out here?
A good knife is good, a hunting knife, not an expensive one. And of course you take some paleobond with you, because some of these fossils are going to be fractured. Let's say it's a jaw or a skull, you don't want the thing to separate too much. So we take paleobond with us. Good to have a brush, good to have a little bit of a scraper and screwdriver, a little hand trowel, and of course a backpack, a small shovel, and plaster bandages. And that's basically what we take with us.
Okay, would the paleobond be similar to, say, what?
Super glue.
Super glue.
Yeah, cyanoacrylate, right.
Frank, nice lab coat and everything. What is this Dragon Slayer about?
The mosasaurs and tylosaurs are related to the Komodo dragon. So I'm proud to say that I guess I am a dragon slayer. Almost alongside of the great paleontologist Roy Chapman Andrews, who was the dragon finder at the Gobi Deserts of the Flaming Cliffs in Mongolia.
And if we can just pass that history along to the next generation so that they can learn from it.
Over 100,000 kids I've lectured to. And I told them, of course, the most important thing is attitude. If you have a great attitude, you can do anything in the world.
Absolutely.
So we're all capable of doing great things, all of us. The most important thing that I did stress to all those kids and even adults is dare to be different. Think outside the box. That's the key to a really interesting life. Dare to be different. Think outside the box. That's it.
Awesome.
So, you bet.
Thank you so much.
You bet. My pleasure.
So in Florida, when we go fossiling, we find so many dugong ribs. That seems to be the practically main fossil that I find anyway. So I see here you've got a dugong up here. So could you tell me about it?
Well, it should be the Florida vertebrate fossil, state fossil. I know the coral is for the invertebrates, because dugongs had many, many ribs, as you could see up there on the
Oh
skeleton.
yeah.
And
Explains why there's so many ribs.
Some of them were 2.5 feet long. And dugongs and manatees are sea cows, even though they're different types of sea cows. But their dense bones, they use them for ballast.
Okay.
That's what
so
they use.
can
That's
stay
why the
steady?
bones are so heavy and dense. They used them for ballast. But I also found a pygmy, probably about maybe a little over half that size, tiny little thing.
Where'd you find this one?
And I found it in Bone Valley, and they
Okay.
named Dr. Daryl Domney named it after me, Titanothere and Garcia.
So it's no secret that the giant tortoise is my very favorite animal. And we even have some pieces of a giant tortoise on our back porch that we're trying to put together. But I wanted to know if you find giant tortoise in South Dakota, and if you do you have examples here to show us?
Well, the giant tortoise that we find in South Dakota are out in the Badlands, but the ones that we have on display here now at this museum are from Nebraska.
Okay.
About 50 miles from here. These are 35, 40 million year old tortoises. And they even get bigger than that, because we have a couple of them put away that are pretty big. But we do find a lot of turtles in the Badlands up here in South Dakota, absolutely, and Nebraska. And like I said, Nebraska is only 50 miles from here where these came from.
Oh, well, I'm hoping to find something.
As the fossil hunters finished up their questions with Frank, Riley suggested that they start to train their eyes for Cretaceous fossils. So while Dave and I stayed with Frank at the museum to finish the tour, the rest of the fossil hunters went in search of ammonites.
So Trish, what are we doing? We're in a car, driving. We are going to an ammonite site today. Our new friend, Riley, invited us to go out with him and get our first look at trying to find fossils today.
And who thought that we would be looking for ammonites today?
Not this girl.
No.
Not me.
But are we happy about it?
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
These rocks were laid down in the late Cretaceous period at the same time that Debbie Sue actually swam. Even though these rocks are a little bit older. And yeah, so this is all oceanic.
So what kind of fossils do you find here?
You can find anything that swam in the ocean, basically, but the main fossils that you find at this location are going to be ammonites and bivalves. Maybe your occasional sponge fossil. And, you might have a chance of finding a vertebrate remain, like a mosasaur or a plesiosaur, or maybe a giant archelon sea turtle, the size of a VW buggy. But yeah, this location is well known for finding ammonites.
So Riley, I think I found something. I'm not sure what this is.
It's definitely a broken piece of a fossil. You can see very finely striated lines. That's just a good hallmark of a vertebrate remain.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was right up there on top of the hill.
What'd you find?
A bivalve.
Look at you.
Yeah.
A complete one.
So I'm up here looking in the actual stratified layers.
Just nice little impressions. I don't know if you can just pick them up with the camera, but you got one here, there, just a bunch of them.
All right, let's go find some more stuff.
No ammonite yet.
Can you tell us what you just found?
So I was just looking down here in the gravels. These are more like Pleistocene river gravel. And I found a piece of a Fairburn agate. You can see the red to the white contrast, but
And what is that?
it's crystal. It's they're typically made out of quartz, but it forms from groundwater moving through voids in the ground. And then the groundwater precipitates the silica into layers, which makes the banding that you commonly see in agates.
So guys, how's it going?
We're doing good.
It's in the family.
Well, we found some fossil
Shell?
imprints of fossilized
Shell?
oysters.
Something I don't know what it is.
Mostly bivalves is what we're finding.
Yep.
Imprints of fossilized bivalves. All up on this ridge
Yep.
here.
Yep.
But no ammonites, not yet.
Come on. I'm coming.
Gotta get down the hill some way, huh?
Oh no, there's a beetle. There we go. Careful up there.
Oh, we actually got an ammonite right here. So this is specifically what we came to this location to find.
Whoa.
And you can see the classic spiral shelled ammonite. You see the cross section right there, the feeding tube.
Right.
And yeah, you can see a few ammonites in here, a couple of bivalves. It's just loaded with fossils. It's kind of a hash plate. That's what a lot of paleontologists call it. But yeah, just kind of a mass mortality death layer.
So that's what we're looking for.
Yep, we're looking for plates of ammonites and shells. So you want to be right on the formation where it's eroding, because dinosaur bones are very brittle. And when you're looking for ammonites and other hard remains, you can look in the rubble piles and the erosional surfaces, because all we're looking for is hard plates with fossils in it. So yeah.
All right, cool. How you guys doing?
Good. Good.
Dig in.
All right, fossil hunters in South Dakota.
Even though Riley was the only one to find ammonites at that site, the fossil hunters learned a valuable lesson in what to begin searching for. It's a lot different than looking around Florida's rivers. What do you say we head back to the museum with Frank and wrap things up?
Well, we are really indebted to a lot of people that like to donate fossils and donate artifacts to institutions and museums. And I gotta talk about my good friend Ernie Kendler, who donated that wonderful egg nest, dinosaur egg nest, oviraptor egg nest. And Ernie obtained it in an auction in Colorado, and it was in a collection for like 45 years. So now we have it now. And thanks to people like Ernie Kendler, we have a wonderful egg nest. And also, we have this really nice Camarasaurus foot that was given to me by, we're gonna call him Bob. And he does a lot of digging in Newcastle, and that was awful nice what he did to give us this for our museum. Lace and Jim Honert, they gave us this wonderful Camarasaur vertebrae. And then we'll go around here to the side. We're not gonna cover everything because we do have quite a few things that people have given us. But this piece here, this lady in town that lives in town named Kim Moy, she gave us that wonderful hand of that Ursus spelaeus bear. Well, we're at the warehouse where we make these dreams come true. Some of these fossils have to be worked on, prepped up, and we're putting together a composite pygmy dugong skeleton. It's a possibility it could be the one that the Smithsonian named for me called Nanosiren Garcia. And maybe not. Your regular dugong is about 3 times the size. Yeah. So this is a little tiny little dwarf pygmy dugong. And this is the crowning jewel right here. There isn't anything like this in the world. It's just amazing. And we had enough parts, more than enough parts, to put a complete skull. So not a complete skull is known of this small, tiny little pygmy dugong. Isn't that amazing? And it's got 2 little tiny tusks in there too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they use for rooting.
All right, so when Dave and I find 10,000 dugong ribs, chunks, we're always finding them broken into pieces like this.
Right.
So were every one of these broken? Do these do the same, or are these complete?
No, you better believe they break too, because they're all dense. Dense bones are brittle and they break. Dugong. This is a dugong. It's not a manatee. These are. Now I'm going to send these to the Smithsonian because they need to be up there at the Smithsonian where they can study these. So the Fossil Hunters is just absolutely just amazing. I'm very proud of what you're doing, Don, and the Fossil Hunters, your whole group. You're bringing to light a story that should be told. It should be appreciated and passed on, because this is information lost if we don't go out and preserve it. And that's what this is all about. So I admire very much what you guys are doing with the Fossil Hunters. You guys are some of my favorite people on this planet. So
We appreciate it, and let me tell you what, your museum is certainly a long time coming, well-deserved, and I mean, I can't think of another guy. Is that a real Orodont?
That's a real Orodont, yeah.
I can't think of another guy that's going to take a real Orodont skull and go and stick it in a, display diorama. How many skulls have you found?
Thousands and thousands of skulls, yeah.
Well, you know what? I mean, you are the guy to fill this museum. You are the guy.
Well, we're going to fill it up all right, no doubt about that.
To fill, well, I mean, it's pretty darn full. And
Yeah.
we are honored to have been here and been able to take a look at it, Randy.
Yep.
So thanks so much.
Great having you here. Thank you.
All right, so here we are, fossil hunters, having visited our fossil finder, Frank Garcia, in South Dakota at the Fossil Finder, the World Fossil Finder Museum, with fossils from all over the world. And we want to say a big thank you. Frank is signing books for us right now, so we appreciate it. By the way, very first book I ever bought in Venice, back in 1976, probably. My very first fossil book, guess who it came from? And why would you think I'd wanted to meet the guy my whole life, right? So, thanks. Big, huge thank you. And thank you so much to the Fossil Finder Museum for allowing us to have this cool little picnic that we're having out here. And everybody's going to do a big thumbs up for Don't forget to tune into our next exciting episode as we explore the bottom of an ancient Cretaceous seabed with Frank Garcia and his crew in search of mosasaurs.